Hello and welcome to Wednesday Warriors. I am your host, Alex Breen, and thank you for joining me today on this lovely Monday evening. I am fresh back from my trip to Cincinnati. Did a couple recordings for Friendly Fire with Patrick that you will be seeing very soon, most likely. And I just wanted to finally, now that I've gotten that trip out of the way, unveil this brand new weekly video format that we will be taking part in together. This is going to be me going over the weekly comics solicitations for the coming release of Wednesday, hence the title Wednesday Warriors. So this will be just kind of me for right now, figuring out a format for how to make this work, but the way I have in mind is I'm not going to be going over the solicitations for every single comic by every single publisher. There's actually a lot more comics that get released than you may think. When you check online at all the publishers that put out comics, we would be here for a while if I did that. So instead what I'm doing is I'm going to be filtering through it and giving you guys my opinion of what looks good to me. And it may be something that you might want to look through when you go at your comic book shop or wherever you get your comics from, whether it's that or Comixology. So let's get started. And actually, one other small thing I should probably make you aware of. Predominantly, my selections are going to be based on trade paperbacks or hardcovers, since that's my preferred reading method. However, if someone likes me to do single issues, I can point out a couple that stand out to me. I happen to have found one out of this list that I was going to recommend anyway. But it's mostly going to be trades, maybe with an occasional single issue here or there I may bring a reference to. Now we all know where I'm coming from with this, and let's get started, shall we? So the first book I found was Go-Go Power Rangers #1. And this is a Boom Studios issue 1 written by Ryan Parrott and with art by Dan Mora. And according to the solicitation, this is being billed as an untold personal story with the original Power Rangers shortly after they got the powers to become Power Rangers. And the cover art looks pretty good for it, and the cover artist is also the series artist for this one. It doesn't mention if it's a mini-series or whatnot, but it seems like kind of an origin tale. So that sounds like a pretty cool thing. The Power Rangers comics, from what I've heard of, have been pretty successful so far. And if you are a big Power Rangers fan, this would probably be something that's worth picking up. It's $3.99. Doesn't mention the page count, but that might be a fun thing for you to look into if you're a fan. Next up, we have Black Sinister hardcover, which this one is written by Kari Andrews, and it looks like the art is by Troy Nixie. And this one is kind of playing with a trope that isn't exactly the most original thing around, but I'm still interested in it because of the creative team. It's essentially a tale of a psychotic Batman, a Batman who is more interested in doling out his version of justice onto gangsters and even citizens alike, and there's not much anyone can really do to stop this guy, so it seems like it's going to be a tale of what happens when Batman goes way too overboard. So it seems like a pretty interesting book. I like Kari Andrews as a writer, and Crazy Batman isn't necessarily the freshest thing around, but I've read enough from Kari Andrews to know that he could put out a really good story. And it's an original graphic novel, and it looks like it's only going for $10, so that seems like a steal for 72 pages. So I will say that's definitely worth checking out. At least on paper, that looks pretty good. Next up, we have By Chance or Providence, which looks to be by Becky Cloonan. And it looks like this one is collecting 3 different stories of hers. I'll say it's collecting Wolves, The Mire, and Demeter. And it looks like it also has colors by Lee Luridge. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I honestly don't know too much about this story either. From what I'm looking at it in the solicitations, it seems like an interesting comic. Seems like more of a fantasy type of book. And I'm curious to pick it up mostly because I read Becky Cloonan's work from Southern Cross, which was this really cool science fiction story. So if you're a fan of Southern Cross, this may be worth picking up. And plus, it's an Image book, so you usually can't go wrong with a lot of Image's selection. They usually have top-notch creators working on books. The price from what I'm seeing for this is a cover of $16.99. I'm not sure how big the book is since it doesn't mention how many pages, but that may be worth looking into if fantasy is your thing or if you're a Becky Cloonan fan. After that, we've got Solid State by Jonathan Coulton and Matt Fraction. This was actually the book that I showed off during my Heroes Con haul. The book that Matt Fraction was selling early at that convention. Looks like it's finally getting a release for the comic book shop market. And it looks like it's going to be in a paperback version instead of the hardcover. So I guess the hardcover version was a convention exclusive. It's hard to go wrong with Matt Fraction, and apparently it's based on the album that Jonathan Coulton was working on called Solid State, so you may want to listen to the music first before you check out the book, but I'm sure you could probably read it on your own and have a good time too. Honestly, because I'm a huge Fraction fan, and I did pick it up, but I haven't quite read it yet, that looks to be an interesting book, and the cover price on that is $19.99. And that one had a pretty good amount of content to it from when I was flipping through it. It doesn't have a page count in the solicitations either for that. But if you're a Fraction fan, that's probably going to be a must for you. And lastly, just to kind of round this out, this is actually kind of a lighter week in comparison to other comics. Probably in the next couple weeks, I bet you I'm probably going to say like a bunch more books. But just to keep it nice and simple for now, the final pick is Wasteland Compendium Volume 1, which is retailing for $39.99, though unfortunately they're not listing how many issues it'll be collecting, though if we are going off of the idea of Image's compendiums, those typically collect it between 20 and 30 issues just to make a conservative guess, though it may collect even more. But even if we're going off the idea of 20 or 30 issues being collected into this compendium, even though once again this is Oni and not Image, 20 or 30 issues for $39.99 is a really good deal. And as for the story itself, I haven't read it yet personally. Like I said, I'm just kind of going off of my gut reaction of that looks like an interesting thing to me, so I figured I'd give you guys a heads up about it. It looks to be a post-apocalyptic story, and it's written by Anthony Johnston with art by Christopher Midden. Now, Anthony Johnston is a writer I've only become aware of relatively recently. He has written a few books that I've enjoyed, primarily The Fuse and Codename Babushka for Image Comics. Both were really well-written comics, so I am comfortable enough with the quality of those works to recommend this one to you. And that about does it for now. Thank you very much for listening. Feel free to leave any comments or suggestions on how you'd like to see this show improve. I'm very much in the developmental phase of this, but this will be kind of something that's more off the cuff and fun for us just to kind of work on as we go. So thank you once again for joining me, and I will see you guys next week.